Om Badram Karanebihi Shrunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Rejatraha Sthirairangayir Tushtuvam Sastanubihi Veshema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swastinah Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinah Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinah Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti 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 Yo antah pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akila shakti daraswadamnam anyam shtahasta charana shravanatvagadin pranan namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam lasatu shrimadananda tirtendurno hrudambare yadvachas chandrika swanta santapam vinikrintati पदवाक्य प्रमाणज्ञान प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथा भूतं विष्णु तत्व विनिर्णयम्. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to folks who have joined for the 8th session of Atharvana Upanishad, popularly known as Mundaka Upanishad. So where are we at this point? So Mundaka Upanishad or Atharva Upanishad comes in the Atharvana Veda, which is one of the branches of the Vedas, which at the end of Dwapara Yuga, Veda Vyasa has kind of compiled this for our benefit. So Mundaka Upanishad, what is the overall structure? It has got 3 Mundakas, Mundaka 1, Mundaka 2, and Mundaka 3. Each Mundaka has got 2 Khandas each. So we got 6 Khandas to complete. So what have we been doing over the past 2.5 months nearly is we are actually spending a lot of time contemplating on the first Khanda. First Khanda has got 9 mantras, and we have done about 7.25 mantras out of 9. So we've just picked up last week, we picked up the first 2 words of the 7th mantra. Okay, sorry, 8th mantra. So we got about 1.75 verses to do for today. Hopefully we'll complete Khanda 1 today. But then, of course, there are other mantras in various Khandas. Khanda 2 has got 13. And then the next 2 Mundakas are very easy to remember. Khanda 1 and Khanda 2, Khanda 1 and Khanda 2. They have 10 mantras, 11 mantras. 10 mantras, 11 mantras. Okay. So if you put it all together, you got 64 mantras. Okay. So in this session, as you know, we always think about numbers quite a bit. Okay. So I want you to think about this problem, not a problem, an interesting contemplation of Sankhya or numbers in Vedic philosophy. And we should try and every time we see some numbers, we should always think about why this particular number is there. So why 64? Why did Angirasa teach Shuanaka over 64 mantras, or why does Mundaka Upanishad, which is Apaurusheya Vakya, has got 64 mantras? Okay. So what is the significance of this number 64? And as you know, Mundaka Upanishad is a combination of Padya and Gadya. Yeah, Atharva Veda is a combination of Rig and Yajus. So not surprisingly, it has got, in the meters, in Padya, as well as in prose. So the 64 mantras are kind of spread between Padya and Gadya. But there is another question here, which I just want to open up for discussion as to why 64. Can anybody think about the significance of the number 64 in Vedic philosophy? Have anybody come across some ideas here? I just want folks to share their ideas. Okay, no worries. So if number 64, do a little bit of Google search on number 64, because every number, every verse in Upanishads, they do have significance. So I was doing a little bit of research on number 64. What is the significance of number 64 in Vedic philosophy? 2 points there that I found out. One was the Vedic philosophy talk about 64 dimensions of the universe. Okay, this is very, very interesting. 64 dimensions or components of the universe. So go and read up about this. That's your homework. And the second 64, which I found very interesting, was in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu talks about 64 qualifications necessary for optimal practice of devotional service. Okay. There are 61 steps or things that we need to be doing so that we are able to reach that level of maturity for devotional service. So that I found very, very interesting. Taking evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam, Rupa Goswami talks about this, that I found as an interesting analogy of number 64. So I hope I hope you found it interesting. So in those 64 verses, who is the Devata of this particular Upanishad? Akshara Namaka Paramatma is the Devata of this Upanishad. The Rishi is, of course, we have Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma, Chaturmukha Brahma, who taught this to Atharva, who taught this to Angira, then Satyavaha, Angirasa, Shuanaka, and all the Acharyas. So they are all the Rishis, and the Chandas here is primarily in Anushtup, but you also have Trishtup, and as I also said, prose. So that is how the Upanishad is structured. So it's good to reconfigure this. We haven't been thinking about Mundaka Upanishad for a fortnight, so I thought I'll just give this basic introduction. So we have done, as I said, 7.25 verses. Okay, so I'll just do the last three, which is what we've been doing for the past 1.5 months. Ataparayaya tad aksharam adigamyate. So who is this akshara? Yattad adreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam achakshushu ashrotram tadapani padam nityam vibhum sarvagatam susukshvam tad avyayam yad bhuta yonim paripashyanti dhiraha. So that we saw about 3-4 weeks ago, talking about what is this concept of God in Vedic philosophy, fundamental aspects. So we did that. Then we looked at the positive aspects of contemplating on this supreme Brahman. And what did Angirasa say? This person, this Bhuta Yonim, how does he create this universe? Yata urnanabihi srijate grihnate cha yata prithvyam oshadayaha sambhavanti yata satah purushat keshalomani tada aksharat sambhavati iha vishwam. So we saw that beautiful verse last time when we did about the whole concepts of creation. Then we kind of closed off with this particular verse, tapasa chiyate brahma. So let's recapitulate this very briefly before moving to the next few lines of words of this Upanishad. So when we contemplate this Akshara Namaka Paramatma, we contemplate him. What does he say? Bhutayonim paripashyanti dhiraha. Angirasa said, the ones that are dhiras, the ones that actually know about this Paramatma, they know him as Bhutayonim. Bhutayoni is he who is a creator of Bhutas. And we understood that Bhuta can be Jivaganas or it could be all the Panchabhutas. So how did that creation come about? 3 concepts of Vedic cosmology is what this verse spoke about, isn't it? Yata urnanabihi srujate grihnate cha. Yata prithvyam oshadayaha sambhavanti. Yata sataha purushat keshalo mani. Tata aksharat sambhavati iha vishwam. Very clear words, no confusion. So what are the 3 components? We've understood this, isn't it? There is the Brahman, there is the matter, and then there are the jivas. These are the 3 things that exist in all of creation. And the first verse, Yata urnanabihi srijate grihnate che, talks about the creation of the material universe, exactly as how the material, exactly how the web comes out of this abdomen of the spider. Just as how the spider weaves the web by using the silk gland that is inside its abdominal cavity, and the silk secretion comes out through these skillrets, as it's called, and then it weaves the web. Exactly is how Paramatma creates the universe, where that Mula Prakriti is in his womb, and he brings forth this creation, eternal cycles of creation. So there we understood that this gives us the concept of efficient cause of the universe. Akshara is the efficient cause of the universe. The material cause of the universe is the Mula Prakriti, like the silk gland in the abdominal cavity of the spider. The Mula Prakriti is different from Paramatma, but it is under his control. It is under his control is the key concept there. So that we understood about Yata Urnanabihi Srijate. Then what about the creation of the jivas? What does jivas creation means? Jivas are eternal and uncreated, we know from Gita. But what does the creation of jiva means? Creation of the jiva means them acquiring a body made of matter. So for that illustration, he said, Yata Prithvyam Oshadayaha Sambhavati. So this is like this earth, Prithvi is the Mula Prakriti, the seed here is the Jiva, and the gardener is this Brahman who waters and looks after this. And what happens here? The seed becomes a oshadi or a plant, and that becomes a tree or whatever. And each seed is distinct. A neem seed becomes a neem tree. A mango seed becomes a mango tree. A neem seed does not become a mango tree. So there we understood that each jiva is different as per its swabhava it is there. And all that this Brahman does is he's a gardener who provides all the facilities and looks after these jivas so that they can grow and reach their potentials. Okay? So again, in this creation, we understood that there is no partiality or cruelty of Paramatma. People sometimes say, why this fellow is poor, whereas the other fellow is rich? Why this fellow is suffering, whereas the other person is not? So God is cruel and partial. No. When we look at this verse and contemplate it, yata prativyam oshadayaha sambhavati, we clearly understand that the bringing forth the jivas into creation involves no partiality or cruelty from his part. We are all here writing an exam. Our question paper is this samsara. Based on our individual capacities, we write this question paper called samsara and get various grades. Some get 0, some get 100. Okay, the ones that get 100 go to moksha. The ones that get 0, either they are stuck in samsara, or some of them even may get -5 or -100. Those are the tamo yogyas who go to the andhatamas. So jiva's creation, no partiality or cruelty. Then the next point is, how does he put a lot of effort? Is Brahman, creating this gigantic universe is not an ordinary task, isn't it? It's a major project. And does he put a lot of effort to do this? So to answer that question, yata sataha purushat keshalo mani, like how spontaneous, it appears to be that the hair comes out of our body very spontaneously, effortlessly. That's the word. Just as how the hair comes out of our body effortlessly, similarly, this Brahman creates this universe effortlessly. Okay, so that is the idea, that this is an effortless act of Akshara. Okay, that does not mean he does not think about it. So we'll come to that in the next verse. But it is an effortless act in the sense he doesn't have to stress and strain to create. Yeah. So he summarizes Tata Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. So this is one of the key verses of the first Kanda that gives you an idea of the creatorship of Brahman. So this material creation, different Vedantic schools have different views, isn't it? So again, very useful for the next 2 minutes to just think about this. So you have this guy who's sitting here, there is the wheel, and then he's putting a clod of clay and puts it on this. This guy is Brahman. This is Vishnu. He's sitting there. He's taking this Mula Prakriti and putting it on this wheel, and then he's creating this universe. The universe can be what? It can be objects like the plates, or it can be the jivas with bodies. So this is a classic Gata, and Gata and the Jiva. So that is also, the Gata is the body and the Jiva is inside this. So this is what our Brahman is doing. He is creating this universe. So the question then that comes here is, does Brahman himself transform himself into the pot and these plates? Or he just uses the material universe, the Mula Prakriti, and then creates this. So that is the two big questions that comes in Vishishtadvaita and Tattvavada or Dvaita. So Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana. So from a Vishishtadvaita school, there is an Achit portion of Brahman that transforms itself into Jada Prakriti. And so that is the view there. So the Brahman himself transforms himself into the material universe. So the philosophers ask in those discussions, can a sentient being, so Brahman is pure consciousness, can a sentient being transform itself to a non-sentient entity? So this is a question that is posed that we can debate endlessly, but that is not the scope of our discussion, but this is the argument. Okay, then let's go to the Vivarta of Mayavada. So what Mayavada says is there is nothing called this guy who's sitting here, there is a wheel, there is a pot, and this guy is doing all this. That is not how the universe is created. The universe is just a superimposition on Brahman. Okay, that is the Vivarta. Just like how a snake appears to be superimposed on a rope when you are walking in that field at around 8 o'clock at night and there isn't enough light and you got a bit of cataract and there is all sorts of defects there. At that point, you perceive this rope that is lying on the field as a snake. But when you go close and examine, you realize that it is actually a rope. So the snake that was perceived, which appears to be superimposed on the rope, is the universe. That is, in a nutshell, what the Mayavada view of the creation is. So that is called Vivarta, superimposition. But then the illustration here is problematic. What Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka. The spider making the web is not a superimposition. This web is not a superimposition of the spider. There is the spider, there is the silk gland, and then there is a web. Yeah. So the illustration that is given in the Upanishad should establish a hypothesis. It should prove an hypothesis or establish an hypothesis. But here it does not appear to support the view of Vivarta, particularly the example of the spider and the web. Similarly is the case of the seed and the plant. The plant is not a superimposition on earth, for example. There is the real seed, and the seed is growing into a plant, and the earth is different from a plant. All that the plant does is it gets nourishment from the earth. Okay. And similarly, here, the hair is not a superimposition on the body. Okay. The hair grows because there is sat. There is a sentient being inside the body. The hair grows only as long as we are alive. Yeah. So again, when you look at these three examples, it does not appear to fit into the view of Vivarta of creation. Yeah. So I'm just giving you those three flavors here. You can do your own manana and see which one appeals to you. But what we should not forget here is, what is the statement of the Upanishads? We should take the view of the Upanishad as it is given to us, rather than us making our own assumptions and reading those things into the Upanishads. Okay, so there are two ways of approaching this. So that is about the material creation in the Vedantic philosophy. So now the question comes here. So what Angirasa does is he takes the third example and then builds on this. So that is why reading the Upanishad is amazing, because each verse is linked up to the next verse. Everything, every word and sentence in the Upanishad has to be seen in context. It's very, very important to see things in context rather than pluck some words and build an airy-fairy philosophy. Okay, so here what is happening? Yata sataha purushat keshalo mani. The question I've asked is, do we put any effort in making the hair grow? No, there is no conscious effort to grow hair. We don't consciously grow, it grows. Okay? So that is the idea there. The idea there is the creatorship of Akshara is an effortless act. Okay? Then the next question is, if this is an effortless act, is it a spontaneous, involuntary, thoughtless act? Like what we do. Is it a spontaneous, involuntary, no control, it just happens, thoughtless act? No, says the Upanishad very, very categorically. Tapasa chiyate Brahma. Tapasa chiyate Brahma. Tapasa means to think. To think. Yeah? Voluntary contemplation. Deep thought. A well-planned activity. So those are all the ideas of tapasa. Tapasa chiyate Brahma. So creatorship of Brahman is a voluntary act. Okay. So again, when we go back to the previous slide that we have done, we should always think about what is the idea that Angirasa is giving us. He is categorically telling us that this creatorship of Brahman is tapasa, thought. An illusionary projection is always an unpremeditated and involuntary act. Yeah? You do not go into the field and say, let me see a snake on a rope. You don't. You just happen to see it. Similarly, you do not drive into a desert and say, let me see a mirage. No, it is an involuntary act. Whereas here, the Upanishad is saying, tapasa chiyate Brahma. So this idea is again problematic from when you look at it from what the Mayavada philosophers are telling us about the creation of this universe. They have said this is a superimposition on Brahman, a superimposition, an illusion. So that means it has to be an involuntary act. Only involuntary act gives you an illusion. A voluntary act never gives you illusion. Okay, so these are all important but subtle points of Vedantic and Vedic philosophy that we need to think about. Yeah, we should never take any views just because it's given to us. We need to do manana and understanding what is the logic of all these arguments. So Angirasa's illustration and statement, at least when you see the wordings of the Upanishad as they stand, does not support the cosmic illusion theory. Right? Think about this problem. So as soon as Angirasa has said, tapasa chiyate brahma. So this is the new set of words for today. So as soon as he said, this Brahman thought, what did he think and what happened next is the question, isn't it? We are daydreaming. Is Brahman also daydreaming? No. Tapasa chiyate brahma. What happened? Tato annam abhijayate. Okay. Annam abhijayate. Abhijayate means was born. Annam was born. Okay. So this word annam is not an ordinary word of Vedas and Upanishads. So it's got various connotations depending on the context in which you look at it. Okay. So before we go to the left, I just have put a section here talking about the philosophy of Annam in the Upanishad. Yeah. So we have to think about this. Yeah. So here to understand, there is this, we have done this before, isn't it? This Ambarini Sukta. Aham suvedeti pietaram asya murdan mamayonihi apswantaha samudre, says Shri Tattva in Ambarini Sukta of Rigveda, 10th Mandala, 125th Sukta. So what does that mean? Says Lakshmi, Shri Tattva is saying, Aham suvam ham suve pitaram asya. Pitara means Chaturmukha Brahma. And then he comes from my forehead, she says. But mama yonihi apswantaha samudre. My origin, I am born from this chap who is sitting or lying on this samudra or the primordial matter, says Shri Tattva or Lakshmi in Ambarini Sukta. So what does that mean? That is where we link this with this particular word, Annam Abhijayate. Annam vai dakshina is a statement of the Vedas. Annam vai dakshina. Okay. So Annam, she sits on the left lap of this Vishnu. Who sits on the left side of the Vishnu? Shri Tattva. Annam vai dakshina. So that is a famous word of Vedas that actually give a name to Lakshmi as Annam. And we also know Anna Lakshmi, isn't it? The various forms of Lakshmi, we also say Anna Lakshmi. And how does that come from? It comes from this word. So now the interesting question, I think Sushrut was mentioning this at some point. How can Shri Tattva be created? She is always presented with Vishnu. Yeah, Shri is always there with Vishnu. There is never a point she is not with Vishnu. So what does that mean that she was created? So the philosophy there is that motivation to bring forth creation is her creation. She is always there. She is uncreated. She is always with Vishnu. But tapasa chiyate Brahma, when Brahman thinks, he looks at Shri Tattva and says, now I'm going to give you the motivation to start the creation. So that bringing forth of the motivation to start creation is the creation of Lakshmi. That aspect. Yeah. So think about this. Yeah. So tato annam abhijayate. So what happens again when we go to our sessions on creation? That is why they all become very, very important to get the basics right. When you understand the basics, the verses become very easy. So when we did the creatorship, when we did this creation series, what did we do? We thought about Vishnu, Mula Prakriti, then we said Mahat Tattva, Ahankara Tattva, and all that. They all will sit very beautifully in this verse when we have understood those ideas. Yeah. So first thing that happens is Lakshmi becomes Vidya, that becomes Shri Bhu Durga, 3 components, and Shri Bhu Durga becomes Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, Abhimani. And then that gets mixed up, isn't it? And then when that gets mixed up, what happens? Mahat Tattva is created. Who is the Abhimani of Mahat Tattva? Chaturmukha. So, Annam is also a name of Chaturmukha. Atinada Annanama Chaturmukha. Okay, so Chaturmukha is also called Anna in Vedic language. Yeah. So, in this one line, tapasa chiyate brahma tato annam abhijayate. The Upanishad is very beautifully giving us the sequence of creation. Mula Prakriti, our chap is saying Om, Mula Prakriti is stirred, he is looking at Lakshmi, Lakshmi becomes Vidya, and then Vidya, what happens when the stirring of Mula Prakriti happens? They become Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, and then Vidya becomes Shri, Bhu and Durga, and then the creation starts, says our Vedas. When a portion of the Mula Prakriti then becomes Mahat Tattva, which is very subtle matter. And the Abhimani of that Mahat Tattva is Chaturmukha. Okay? So after this Annam vai Dakshina, Atinada Annanama Chaturmukha comes. Then look at what is the next word. Annat Pranaha. Yeah? Annat Anantaram Pranaha. Immediately after the appearance of Chaturmukha Brahma in creation, Prana Tattva comes into creation. Annat Anantaram Pranaha. Yeah? Annat Prano. Okay? Look at the next word. Beautiful. After that, Manaha. So, Tapasa Chiyate Brahma. Tato Annam Abhijayate Annat Prano Manaha. Okay. From the Mahat Tattva, a portion of the Mahat Tattva then differentiates into Ahankara Tattva. Ahankara Tattva is Abhimani is whom? Rudra. Ahankara Tattva's Abhimani is Rudra. Then what happens to Ahankara? That differentiates into three components, right? Tejasa, Vaikarika, and Tamasa Ahankara. And then the Tamasa Ahankara then differentiates, then becomes Tanmatras, Panchabhutas, and so on. So again, go back to those creation sessions because they are foundational and fundamental. Okay. So because that fits in very beautifully here. So after Mukhya Prana, Annat Pranaha Mano, Annat Prano Manaha. So after Mukhya Prana came, so after that, Ahankara comes up, or the Rudra, Manaha. So who is going to answer this very quickly? Who is the Abhimani Tattva of Manas?
Rudra.
Rudra, beautiful Pratibhaji. Thank you. So no confusion in these verses at all. So the Rudra or Shiva is the Abhimani of Manas. So Manaha, Mana, wherever the Vedas say Manas, Manaha, you have to take it as Rudra. Okay, so no doubts there. So Annat Prano Manaha. Okay. Next question is, what does Rudra create? What happens after that? Okay, that is the next verse. That is beautiful. Yeah, but before I do that, I just want to remind ourselves we should never waste an opportunity to do revision, right? So Annam in the Upanishads. Okay. So I've just listed a few very key verses of various Upanishads for us to understand who this Annam is. And that will help us every time we see Annam. Let us not just say this Annam is just the food that we eat. That is very, very basic understanding. So we need to dig deeper. Chadayanti iti chandamsi, right? So we have to dig deeper and deeper and understand Vedic philosophy. That is what our acharyas teach us. So what is the philosophy of Annam? One, we understood this Anna is Annam vai Dakshina. But we also understand from Taittiriya Upanishad, where Chaturmukha Brahma, he says this is the Chaturmukha Brahma who has actually attained moksha already. And he is doing prayers. Ahamannam, Ahamannam, Ahamannam. Ahamannado, 3 times. Ahamannado, Ahamannadaha. Chaturmukha Brahma said, I am Annam, he says, and he actually worships this Paramatma in the moksha sthiti. Ahamannam, I am Anna, I am the food for this Paramatma. And then this is an important aspect. We have done this, Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 6. We have looked at how the creation comes about. You remember once that that initial discussion that Nachiketa and Uddalaka have, there, then he starts off, once he is given that Vacharambana Vikaro Namadeyam Mrutika iti eva satyam Lohamanina iti eva satyam Karshnayasa iti eva satyam, and so on. And then he talks about Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asi Dekameva Advitiyam, and he talks about that, and then he talks about the creatorship of this Brahman. Okay, so again, see, every Upanishad will always talk about the creatorship of Brahman from different aspects. Okay, we should not get confused. The Upanishads are always saying the same thing. It is our problem when we get confused. Yeah, they say the same thing. Okay, so then what does it say? Tad aikshata bahusyam prajaye iti. Tattejo asrija tattejo asrijata tattejo aikshata bahusyam prajaye iti tad apo asrijata tasmad yatra kvacha sochati swadeva va purushat tejasa eva tad abhyo jayante. Ta apa aikshanta bahusyam prajaye iti ta annam asrujanta. So look at that. There is an annam there that comes into asrujanta. Go back to those sessions, because what Uddalaka is teaching Shvetaketu, not Nachiketa, sorry, Shvetaketu, is how the evolution of creation happens. Tejas. And in that section, we saw Tejas is a name of Lakshmi and Chaturmukha. As how Annam is a name of Lakshmi and Chaturmukha. In that context, Tejas, there is an etymology of Tejas. Go and check it out. That denotes Vidya and Chaturmukha. Aap there denotes Mukhya Prana. And then Annam there denotes Rudra. Yeah. Look at the etymology of Rudra. Hara, Ahara, Annam, Atti iti Annam. Okay, so this Rudra is not an ordinary guy, right? He is the destroyer, some people say. That is what he eats. Atti iti Annam. He eats during destruction under the command of Paramatma. Okay, so we need to look at the context. Look at Purusha Shukta. Purusha eva idang sarvam yadbhutam yachabhavyam uta amrutatvasya ishanaha yad annena atirohati. Okay, there is a different type of Anna that is being discussed in Purusha Shukta. What is that Anna? That Anna is, this Purusha is way beyond the material universe. There that Anna means matter, material universe. And this Purusha is also way beyond Sri Tattva. That is the meaning of, in that particular context, Ed Annena Atirohati. So the word Anna needs to be watched very, very carefully. What is a Parama Mukhya Vritti of Anna? Taittiriya Upanishad gives a definition. Adyate atticha bhutani tasmad tad annam tad uchyata iti. This Paramatma is called Annam because Adyate atticha bhutani. He eats everybody during at the time of dissolution, and everybody is dependent on him, like how we are all dependent on food. Okay? That is why he is also called Annam. So Annam is a profound word of Upanishads that we should never forget. Think about this, Manana, you can get lots of philosophy out of this, but they are all consistent. The Samanvaya is 100% here. Okay, so I hope you're able to grasp that Samanvaya of what is going on here. So coming back to our verse here, Tapasa chiyate Brahma tato annam abhijayate annat prano manaha. Satyam lokaha karmasu cha amrutam. Okay. So that is very, very important. Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because this Manaha is this Rudra. He starts create, he then creates. What does Rudra create? I've just told you very briefly. This Ahankara Tattva differentiates into three. Vaikarika, Tejasa, Tamasa. Vaikarika becomes Manas. Manas has got 5 components. Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta, Chetana. Besides Rudra, there are so many Abhimani Devatas there, but Rudra comes top. Tejasa becomes various Indriyas, Karma Indriya and Jnana Indriyas. Tamasa Ahankara becomes Pancha Tanmatras, Panchabhutas. Panchabhutas, the first modification of Panchabhuta is our friend Akasha Abhimani, Ganesha. Then Vayu, Tejas, Aap and Prithvi. This Prithvi in the lowest sense is also called Annam. This chap is also called Annam. But the most important thing is this Manaha then actually goes and creates the universe. Okay, he does all these things, Panchatanmatra and Panchabhutas. And this 5 Panchabhutas is what we call this Brahmanda, right? We call this as this material universe. Okay. So this Rudra does the creator. What is this Loka? This Brahmanda is Loka that he creates. What is Angirasa saying? Satyam Lokaha. Okay, so I don't know how some of our friends in other school actually forget these words conveniently. Annat Prano Manaha. This manaha creates satyam lokaha, not mithya lokaha. Angirasa has not said annat prano manaham mityam lokaha. No, he has said annat prano manaha satyam lokaha. Again, to re-emphasize what he has said in the previous verse about these three ways of creation of the universe. Satyam lokaha. The created universe by Rudra under supreme control is real. Satyam lokaha. Nobody can have an argument on this. Okay? Because these are the words of the Upanishads, Apaurisha Veda. And yet, do we have to accept that this world is a mithya? I leave it to you to decide. So, annat prano manaha satyam lokaha. Here is another very, very interesting angle to look at this. And again, we have done this so many times. Every time we think about Brahmanda, we should think about Pindanda. Yeah, we should think about our body, isn't it? Our body is what? It's the microcosm, whereas the universe is the macrocosm. Whatever is there in the universe is there in this Pindanda. So before we move further, can somebody tell us the Panchakoshas, please? They are here in this figure, but it'll be nice if one of you can explain the Panchakoshas that we have. Who wants to go for that? So the coverings of the material body is called Panchakoshas, right? So what do we have? We have Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya. Sorry, who wants to? Pratibhaji, go for it.
Just tell the 5 things: Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya koshas.
Thank you, Pratibhaji. So those are the 5 coverings of the Pindanda, right? The Pindanda is made of matter. And this matter, this body which is made of matter, our Vedic philosophy says it's got 5 layers made. This Jiva is covered by 5 layers. Prakashji.
Just one question, Sanjay. Anandamaya Kosha, you have put it as Chetana. Still, it is a Kosha covering. So I'm wondering how it is Chetana. That's the only, I have a small doubt on that.
Okay. So yeah, sure. The view there, Prakashji, is when you look at the Upanishads and various areas, sometimes the manas, when you say manas alone, you take it as 5 components of the mind. So the Chetana Chitta, so what does it mean? How shall we do it? So this manas, when you say manonmaya kosha, you start off from manonmaya kosha. You have manas, buddhi, and ahankara. So those are the 3 basic components of the mind. So manas is what we just receive that knowledge from the sense organs, and it is processing it. Buddhi, then that component of the mind then rationalizes and looks at pros and cons and comes up with a decision. And ahankara component of the mind will say, I am now making that decision. That I-ness comes with ahankara. And once it has kind of processed this information, it goes into memory. Okay? It goes into a memory shell, which is another component of the mind. That memory shell is called chitta. Now that memory shell is for this birth. Okay, so there is that memory, there is that component of the mind which stores the memory of this birth. But the philosophers say in Linga Sharira, that is in the subtlest of your bodies, you also have imprints of all the previous births that you had. So that previous birth is called Chetana. Yes, that is the deep memory of various births is called Chetana component of the mind. Then the present memory is Chitta. Then you have Manas, Buddhi, and Ahankara. So the philosophy there is those 5 components have been linked with the 3 koshas of the material body. So the Manonmaya Kosha and Vijnana. Manonmaya Kosha includes these 3. The Vijnanamaya Kosha includes the Chitta component. And the Anandamaya Kosha includes the deep memory of all our previous births. This is the view of the Tattvavada. Okay? But there are other views. So that this is all discussed in the Taittiriya Upanishad, isn't it? Where Anandamayo Abhyasa, that particular sutra, what is that Anandamaya and so on, those discussions are happening. But here, this Anandamaya Kosha is the Linga Sharira, where the deep memory of all previous births is based. The imprints are there. So look at this Pindanda. Annamaya Kosha. What is it made of? Aap and Prithvi. Water and earth makes the gross body that we have, which is what we call Annam. Okay? The Pranamaya Kosha is made of what? Vayu, Tejas and Akasha, which is very interesting. Akasha is space, Tejas is fire, Vayu is air. This is what is metabolism is all about. So we take in the air through our air passage, which is the space. And once we have taken the breath in and the oxygen goes into our cells, it goes into oxidative phosphorylation and we start making ATPs, which is the currency of energy that keeps the body alive. That is the fire, the energy of the body. So this Vayu, Akasha and Tejas component, they form the Pranamaya Kosha of our body. Then, of course, we have the mind. Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara. And as I told you just a minute ago, all 5 components will be considered under Manas. That is why our Shiva is called Panchamukhi, right? Shiva is called Panchamukhi. Why? Because the Abhimani of the 5 components of the mind. So, Annam, Prano, Manaha. So, if you look at Brahmanda, we understand Tato Annam Abhijayate, Annat Prano Manaha. Same in Pindanda. This is how the bodies are acquired by us when we come into samsara. Annam, Prano and Manaha. Okay. Now, what do we do once we've got all this gross body and the body is now got metabolic function? What do? We do various activities. Okay. For us, this loka is this body. Yeah, Kshetra, as Gita talks about. Kshetra, for us, loka means body. In Brahmanda concept, loka means the various planetary systems and the whole universe is called the loka. For us, we reside in this loka. And these jivas reside in various bodies. And these jivas reside in various planetary systems across the universe. So that is another grand vision of the Upanishads. We are not just sitting in this particular terrible place, but we are also doing our transactions all over the place. Okay? This is our lokas. So this is how the jivas are coming into creation. Remember, this is still talking about the sequence of creation is what the Upanishad is talking about. So once we have acquired this body with all this Annam, Prano and Manaha, and all these Abhimani Devatas who control Annam, Pranam, Manaha, they are also there. Then what we do? We start doing actions. Karmasu. So this is, once we have all this is when we do all our cheshte, as we call, all sorts of good things, bad things, or indifferent things, whatever. So we are doing actions. If we do good actions, we can get good karmas. Okay? So when you do good karmas, you reach stages like Amrutam. Yeah, that is the meaning here. Annat Prano Manaha. This is a Satyam Lokaha. So this body of ours is real. Okay? For those people, and this is a very crude example, but I'll say this anyway. For those people who think everything is mithya, this universe is mithya, therefore this body is also mithya and illusory, I kindly ask these people to go to hospitals and see human bodies suffering with various diseases. And at that point, I request kindly to tell these patients, don't worry, mate, your body is mithya. Or when something happens to themselves. So there are many people who are flaunting around there, talking this world is an illusion and world is an illusion. When they get their diseases and they go to hospital, ask them to just think that this body is an illusion and not go to any hospitals. Yeah. So this is not practical philosophy to say this body is an illusion. The body is satyam. Suffering is satyam. That is what this Upanishad is saying. Satyam lokaha. You acquire this body is real, and using this real body, you're doing various actions. Based on your actions, you're reaching various lokas like Swarga, which is what Amrutam actually means. Yeah, so I hope you get the spirit of this, of what Angirasa is talking about. Just saying this world is mithya, just saying this is not enough. You have to practically take it. And I don't think many folks out there who are theoretical in their philosophy are actually practical in their experiences, because the practical experience is different from airy-fairy, philosophies not based on any foundations. So my humble request is, let us get into Shuanaka's shoes and understand what Angirasa is teaching us in these verses. And he's clearly saying, Tapasa chiyate brahma tato annam abhijayate annat prano manaha satyam lokaha karmasucha amrutam. This is for you, mate. is saying. Your body is also born like this, like the Brahmanda. There is also another view here. Prano manaha satyam. Okay? Pranaha, there will mean is this body. This body is active only when the prana is there. So this whole body is called kaya. Then you have manasa, what you think. And then satyam is the true words that you speak. Yeah, kaya, manasa, vak. These are all the various karmas that we do. Is we do actions with our body, we think, and we also say something. Okay, so they're all the linked up with karma. Think about this. This guy is the most important. The manasa is the most important around karma. What we think is what our imprints are going to become. Yeah, the karmic imprints. So that is what becomes karmasucha amrutam. So these words should give us an opportunity to think about how do you kind of put this all in the grand context. So one of the consistent themes that we will see in the Upanishad is that there is always a discussion about creation. And every Upanishad, we are now on the 5th Upanishad or the 4th Upanishad, and every Upanishad that we have done, this creation aspect comes in, right? And this is very beautifully discussed, of course, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. And in our creation series, we have done this, that in Bhagavatam, Veda Vyasa says that creation happens in 9 stages. Okay. The first one is called Prakrita Srishti, and the second stage is called Vaikrita Srishti. In Prakrita Srishti, what happens? Mahat Tattva, Ahankara Tattva, Bhutas, Indriyas, Manas happen up to the 5th stage. And in the 6th stage, ignorance is brought forward, which is a positive ignorance. Then the Pindanda comes into being. Initially, the plant kingdom, then the animal kingdom of the lower species, and then the animal kingdom, the highest species on Mrityuloka, which is man. That is the 9th stage of creation. And then what happens? This Pindanda, Vaikrita Srishti, there are 8.4 million species. And based on our Karmasucha Amrutam, we're going to go around this 8.4 million species. Okay. So again, when you put the Bhagavatam in, so we are basically doing Prasthana Trayas and bringing all the stuff, right? The Ashaptasu, Shivashu, Matrushu. All the 7 things we have to bring here and understand what the Vedas are saying to get the Samanvaya. They are saying the same thing. So the Brahmanda sequence, Pindanda sequence, and finally, man who has evolved. Okay. So this is a key message of this particular Upanishad, certainly on the first kanda of the first Mundaka. So what has Angirasa said so far? He said this Brahman is tad avyayam yat bhutayonim paripashyanti diraha, that he is the creator of the universe. Then he said, he gave 3 definitions, examples of what this created universe is. Then he said, this created universe is a voluntary, thoughtful act of Brahman. Tapasa chiyate brahma tato annam abhijayate annat prano manaha satyam lokaha karmasucha amrutam. Just before Mundaka Upanishad, we did Isha Upanishad, 8th mantra. Kavir manishihi paribuhu swayambuhu yata tatyato artan vyadadat shashvatibhyaha samabhyaha. Okay. And I think we spent 3 sessions discussing this mantra. Yata tatyato artan, real universe. Okay. And that is why our Veda Vyasa says the definition Brahma Lakshanamaha Janmadyasya Yataha. Yeah. What is this Janmadi, etc.? Utpatti, Sthiti, Samhara, Niyatir, Jnanam, Avrittihi, Bandha, Moksha, cha Purushat, Yasmat, Harirekarat, Skanda Purana. 8-fold dispensations. Yeah, not just 3, 8. Taittiriya Upanishad again gives 4 of those. Yato va imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti abhisambhishanti, tad vijijñāsasva tad brahmeti. And 4th Adhyaya, we were having some discussions this morning. 4th Adhyaya of Brahma Sutra, Jagat Vyapara Varjam. This creatorship and looking after the affairs of the universe falls only to Brahman and nobody else. So this is what this guy is doing. He's creating this universe for our benefit. And this universe is amazing. So in Dvadasha Stotra, Acharya says, Bahuchitra Jagat, Bahuda Karanat, Parashaktihi, Anantaha Gunaha. When you see this gigantic real universe, which is so much complex, understand how great this Paramatma is. Yeah. If I think this universe is mithya and an illusion, I will not think about the greatness of Paramatma. I will only say this guy is fooling me. I will only say this guy is fooling me and giving me an illusion. Yeah, I will not see the greatness of Paramatma. This created universe is real. So that is why Jayatirtha makes a fundamental statement. We have done this before so many times. Janmadhyasya yataha iti bhagavata sutrakarena jagat udayadi nimitta karanatvam parasya brahmano lakshanam abhihitam. Nacha jagat satyatamantarena tadvastavam sambhavati. Detailed descriptions of the sequence of creations described in the universe is relevant only if the creation is real rather than an illusion. Why describe something that does not actually exist is one of the questions. And to answer that question is why Veda Vyasa has given the definition of Brahman as Janmadhyasya yataha. Unless this created universe is real, there is no point in saying Janmadhyasya yataha. Okay? Think about those core fundamental problems. Okay. So now we got another 8 to 9 minutes to finish off today. So hopefully I'll introduce 1 or 2 words. I thought I'll finish the topic today. It's not going to happen. So what happened in the 7th verse? He said, Tapasa chiyate brahma, tato annam abhijayate, annat prano manaha satyam lokaha karmasu cha amrutam. This is the beauty of the Vedic philosophy, right? No question is left unanswered. So the next question Angirasa is asking is why does he have to think? Yeah, that is the next question. Shuanaka is actually asking this question for us. Why does he have to think? He doesn't have to think, right? Harish, did you have something to ask? Okay, no worries. So why does he have to think? Why does Brahman have to think? If you think about our thought processes, okay, we do lots of thought processes, okay? Most of the time we are daydreaming or we are thinking about, oh, what am I going to cook for today? Because I don't know what I want to cook. Only when we don't know what we are going to cook, then we say, what can I cook? Yeah. Oh, how am I going to make this cake? Only when you do not know how to make a cake, you say, oh, how do I make this apple, whatever, crumble, strudel, whatever it is, how do you make it? Yeah. So in our thought process, there is always a component of ignorance. Has always been the view of the Vedic rishis. When we think and think about this deeply, okay, whatever we think or anything that we think, there is always a component of ignorance in it, a component of positive ignorance in it, and that is why we think. Yeah. So the rishi is now the Shuanaka, who is such a great scholar himself. He says, but why does this Brahman think? If he is so great guy, Tadavyayam, Brahmayonim, all those things you have said in the previous verses, you've given him such great adjectives. Why does he have to think? Okay. Because for our thinking, there is always an ignorance. Does that mean that Brahman also has got some ignorance? And is it because of the ignorance he's thinking, oh, how do I create the Andromeda galaxy tomorrow morning? How am I going to create? What are the things that I'm going to think about? Is that how he's doing it? No. Immediately, Angirasa gives him another amazing verse. You know, I mean, I can't tell you. Each verse of this Upanishad is amazing, and the next verse is even amazing. Yeah, these are beautiful verses, and all the acharyas, they take these key verses of Mundaka Upanishad to bring forth various philosophies. So immediately Angirasa says, Yes sarvajnaha sarvavid, Yasya jnanamayam tapaha, Tasmat Yetat Brahma Nama Rupam Annam cha jayate. He qualifies now and says this Nama Rupa Vyakarana. What is this creation of this universe? Nama and Rupa. Rupa is modification of the Mula Prakriti. The transformation of the Mula Prakriti is the Rupa. And each Rupa has got a name. That is the Nama. The name is linked to each Rupa, which is the creation of this material world called Annam here. Cha jayate, nama rupam annam cha jayate. So there are so many philosophies that comes here, but the first point there is yes sarvajnaha sarvavit, yasya jnanamayam tapaha. He said, you are right, Shuanaka. You are asking the right question. Mundane jivas, when they think, there is an element of ignorance. Whereas this fellow, Akshara, he is jnanamayam tapaha. His thought is full of knowledge. Jnanamayam. He is what? Jnananandamaya. And his thought he's got no ignorance of whatever, and he is Jnanamayam Tapaha. How does he establish that philosophy? Maybe I'll just do one word today and close today's session. So what does he say? Yes, Sarvajnaha. This Akshara is Sarvajnaha. He is not Nirguna. He is Sarvajna. Yes, Sarvajnaha. Some folks, unfortunately, think even for Vishnu to become Sarvajna, the Nirguna Brahman should have a superimposition of ignorance. So that is a crazy philosophy. But anyway, let's come to here. Yes, Sarvajnaha. Akshara is defined as Sarvajnaha. Yeah, Sarvajnaha means what? Omniscient. Omniscient means what? He knows past, present, and future. Future is what? Eternal cycles. Past is what? Eternal cycles that has happened before. Present is what? Now. Okay? He knows every bit of every nook and corner of the universe, and he knows every bit of every jiva that is doing various actions. He knows all this simultaneously at a single instant. He knows this. That is why he is called Sarvajnaha. So that is the definition of omniscient, Sarvajnaha. So he says this Akshara is Sarvajnaha, and he is Sarvavit. Sarvavit. So if you look at Sarvavit and Sarvajnaha, they seem very similar, right? Sarvajnaha, Vit means knowledge. Nya means knowledge. Sarvajnaha means he knows everything. Sarvavit means he knows everything. So this becomes tautology or punarukti as we call it if you don't understand this properly. Okay. They are saying they are actually giving us different ideas. Okay. So Sarvavit actually has got 3 levels of etymology. One is Sarvam Vit. Vit means to know knowledge. Omniscient. So Sarvam Vit is also called Sarvavit. Sarvatra Vidyate. He who is present everywhere is also called Sarvavit. Sarvam Vindati. He has attained everything. He is Aptakama. There is nothing that he needs to attain. He has attained everything because he is omnipotent. That is why he is also called Sarvavit. So this has got 3 meanings. So with the contextual relevance in place, what we have to understand is Sarvajnaha has already been described. So we have to take these 2 meanings of Sarvavit. Sarvatra Vidyate, he is omnipresent. Sarvam Vindati, he has attained everything. Aptakamaha, he is omnipotent. So our Angirasa is qualifying to say that this Brahman is Sarvajnaha, he is Sarvavit. Therefore, Jnanamayam, Yasya Jnanamayam Tapaha. This Brahman's thought. You asked that question. I said in the previous verse, Tapasachiyate Brahma Tato Annam Abhijayate. Now I am qualifying, saying that this Tapasa is Jnanamayam Tapaha. Okay. Not like yours and mine, where there is always a component of ignorance. His is Jnanamayam Tapaha. Jnana, knowledge, Maya. Look at Maya. Again, we should never shy away from revising what are the etymological meanings of Mayat Pratyaya, as it's called. Mayat Pratyaya has got 3 meanings. Prachurya, Vikara, Tadatmya. Prachurya means abundance. Okay? Tadatmya means his Swarupa. Okay? So you could take both here, that this Jnana, he's got infinite amount of knowledge, and his Jnana is his Swarupa. Okay? So he is Jnanamayam Tapaha. Okay? What about us? We are ignorant. We always have ignorance in our thought. We are subatomic and we are incapable of anything on its own. If we think we are capable of doing anything independently, that is our reason for samsara. We are actually incapable of anything. These are our 3 qualities. Ignorant, subatomic, incapable of anything. Whereas in this line, Akshara is defined as Sarvajna. Okay? We are subatomic. He is Sarvatra Vidyate, omnipresent. Okay? We are incapable of anything on its own, but he is Sarvam Vindati. He has attained everything independently, Aptakama, omnipotent. So these are all the ideas that this line is telling us. Okay. So I'm going to close there right on the dot. That I'm pleased that we were able to do a significant portion of this. But my intention here is that we need to approach the Upanishads as they are telling us, not us actually putting our own ideas into this. So when we see that the sequence and the language of Angirasa is absolutely consistent, he is consistent in every word and spirit. So once he has given such great definitions of Akshara, then he goes back and says, Tasmad etat Brahma namarupam chajayate, and then he goes on. Okay, so we will do that in the next class. And as you know, there is lots and lots of discussions to be had here. So I'll close at this stage. Krishna Pranamastu. And if there are any questions, we can take it up. Hare Krishna. Okay, cool. So looks like there are no questions today. So keep thinking about this problem, because then we will, what we will do next class is we'll finish the last line of this kanda. Then we will have a little bit of a recap of what is the core philosophy that Angirasa is saying. Then the next kanda is even more interesting. It's incredible. The next kanda is, okay, it talks about the fire sacrifice, because this Shuanaka is what? He's Shaunako Havai Mahashalaha. So again, Angirasa then goes, the karmas that you do, the practical things that you do, how do you bring it into Paravidya? Because that is what the discussion is, isn't it? Yata para, ata para yayatad aksharam adhigamyate. How in your karma anushtana, you can convert it into a Paravidya. So that is a very practical description of what you and I can do. So that will be the next kanda, which is again an amazing sets of verses, deeply scientific. That is where the focus will be for the next kanda. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. Can I get Harish to take us through Omkara and then we close today's session, please?
Sure.
Excellent. Hare Krishna, everyone. Take care. Stay safe. So we will catch up again next Sunday. Take care. Hare Krishna.